Hello and welcome everybody, I am Brandon and we got a buttload of game delays to talk about today, including Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cyberpunk 2077, and the Marvel Avengers. On top of all that, Cyberpunk 2077 developers CD Project Red has said that they're requiring crunch time up until release date. We're gonna get into all that and more on another episode of the shit you care about. So, like I said, we got quite a bit of game news to go through today, so let's just hop right into that. Kicking it off from the top, we got Cyberpunk 2077, which has been delayed from April 16th, 2020 to September 17th, 2020. A pretty big bummer here, seeing as how we were just around the corner from Cyberpunk releasing. And although I am pretty bummed about this getting moved back to later in the year, I am definitely glad that they're getting more time to focus on the polish and overall presentation of the game. Of course, I think this is going to be one of the biggest selling games of 2020, if not the next decade. So I think it's important that they kind of have the time that they need to really perfect this game. In fact, the official statement that CD Projekt Red posted over on their Twitter says as follows: "We have important news regarding Cyberpunk 2077's release date we'd like to share with you today. Cyberpunk 2077 won't make the April release window, and we're moving the launch date to September 17th, 2020. We are currently at a stage where the game is complete and playable, but there's still work to be done. Night City is massive, full of stories, content, and places to visit, but due to the sheer scale and complexity of it all, we need more time to finish playtesting, fixing, and polishing. We want Cyberpunk 2077 to be our crowning achievement for this generation, and postponing launch will give us the precious months we need to make the game perfect. Expect more regular updates on progress as we get closer to the release date. We're really looking forward to seeing you in Night City. Thank you for your ongoing support." Moving on, Marvel Avengers by Crystal Dynamics has now been pushed back from May 15th, 2020 to September 4th, 2020. It does sound like they're going to be kind of in that same area as Cyberpunk releasing, which I definitely think is an interesting place for them to be releasing a game. You definitely think they could have just waited like another month to not be in competition with Cyberpunk. I really do think that they're going to end up hindering from this choice. That being said, we really haven't seen much about the Marvel Avengers up until this point. I think we got a leak and a trailer from last E3, and maybe they did a gameplay video. I'll have to double check on that. Pretty much though, we really haven't heard much about this game, so it doesn't surprise me a whole lot that they're trying to push that date out as much as possible. I wouldn't even be surprised to see another delay come from that if it wasn't such a big IP. Moving on, the Final Fantasy VII Remake has also gotten a delay from March 3rd, 2020 to April 10th, 2020. That is a pretty small delay, so obviously we don't have to wait that much longer for this game to come out. I just think that was kind of a good move on their part. I don't know how much a month of time is going to give them, but clearly there was just a couple things they needed to get done before the game came out. And honestly, any more time you can give to a game that is a remake of a game that people freaking love, I think is time due. So hopefully they will take the month that they have to kind of just polish up Final Fantasy VII, and we'll get a really cool release coming just 1 month after the original release date. It is kind of weird to see that all these game developers have come out saying that they want to take more time for polish and fixing technical bugs and stuff like that. This really isn't something you would have heard a couple years ago, and I definitely think the gaming community is a little bit more open to this sort of thing nowadays. In the past, people would have berated the game developers for not getting their game out on time, and I think people are a little bit more understanding now. They'd rather have a good game that comes out a little bit later than a trash heap on fire that nobody wants to play or enjoy at all. I personally am totally fine with these delays if it gives them more time to make something good. I would rather buy a complete game instead of a broken mess, and especially with the last couple games I've bought, like Jedi Fallen Order, I've really found some of the technical aspects of this game to be lacking, and maybe they could have even used a couple more months of time to kind of polish and fix that up. Like I mentioned, Final Fantasy VII Remake is really only another month out, which I really don't think is that much longer to wait. so I'm totally cool with that. The Avengers has barely shown off any of their game as of this point, so I really didn't expect them to actually hit their original release date they were shooting for. And as for Cyberpunk 2077, I think this is going to be one of the greatest games of the next decade, so I really think any more time and polish they can put into this game is a good thing. Look at Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, for instance, which ended up pushing their game out a couple months and ended up becoming one of the greatest games of the last decade. So definitely if they're shooting for that title, I think it's important that they take the time they need to make something polished and complete. So while these delays are kind of a bummer and we're not going to be able to play Cyberpunk until later in the year, I think it is important for these companies to give the time that they need to make something complete instead of releasing something that is not complete or not what the fans wanted out of it. Now, jumping into a whole other territory, we're going to talk about crunch a little bit. So just recently in a call to investors, CD Project Red's chief executive admitted that they will be probably making their employees work more and do crunch time so they can make their September release date later in the year. CD Projekt Red's Adam Kaczynski said in an article to Polygon, "Is the development team required to put in crunch hours? To some degree, yes. We try to limit crunch as much as possible, but in the final stages, we try to be reasonable in this regard. But yes, unfortunately." This is definitely not the first time we have heard CD Projekt Red making their employees crunch in order to finish a game or polish it up before release. In fact, Jason Schreier wrote a really good article over on Kotaku last year about Anthem and the horrible working conditions that the employees had to endure during development, and I definitely recommend you check this article out. It totally is required reading if you're interested in game development and crunch time at all. After writing this article for Kotaku about Anthem, a bunch of former CD Projekt Red employees started coming out and saying that they noticed parallels between what was going on over at Anthem and the development of The Witcher 3 and CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077. Saying that they apparently aren't treating their workers much better than how Jason Schreier was describing over in the Anthem article. Going even further to tell him that they understand the irony between creating a cyberpunk video game and their dystopian work environments. Now, while I can't say for sure what is going on over at CD Projekt Red, and in past articles they have mentioned that they are trying to learn from this experience and hear from their workers to make a better work experience for them, especially compared to how they treated them back in the Witcher 3 development. I think it's important to recognize that employees of game companies, as well as other similar jobs like the animators over on the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, are facing legitimate issues when it comes to game and movie delays. Even going as far to make your employees work in unsafe or underpaid positions to get a job done. And obviously at a certain point you need to make a product, you need to make money off that product, and I understand that time is needed to make something good. That being said, couldn't we even just push out the game a couple more months? And then we don't have to make employees lose time with their families or lose money in the process of making this game or movie. Honestly, I think CD Projekt Red has sort of painted themselves into a corner at this point because all the hype around this game coming out, along with next generation consoles easily taking the spotlight in any video game news article coming in the next couple months, it sort of seems like they need to get a game out at this point to provide on that hype that they have been building since 2013. Mind you, when they released the first Cyberpunk 2077 trailer that didn't have much to do with the game at all, that showed that they were working on something similar in that world. I honestly feel pretty conflicted on this topic considering that I was just talking so highly about delaying games and giving them more time to, not be giant piles of garbage, and now I'm kind of retracting that a little bit to say that I really don't feel comfortable with them also harassing their workers into working long, unneeded hours and not paying them enough. I really do see a lot of parallels to when the Sonic movie decided to go through a bunch of redesigns. We also aren't really seeing the back end where there are a bunch of employees getting not treated correctly for the work that they're doing. And honestly, it is kind of the underbelly of the entertainment industry that you really don't hear a lot of the time, is the people who have to animate the people who have to develop, the people who are behind the scenes a lot of the time behind a product. All of that being said, we will just have to wait and kind of see what happens. Obviously, if people aren't happy working at CD Project Red, they're going to leave and go somewhere else. It's a matter of time. That being said, CD Projekt Red also makes some of the most polished and amazing video games of our time, so there really is just a give and take there. And that's about all the news I have as far as game delays and crunch have to go. I hope we can kind of at least discuss this topic a little bit, even though we didn't get a definitive result in the end. That being said, I'm Brandon. Thanks for watching another episode of The Shit You Care About. Remember to like the video if you like what I do, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more, and comment down below with your thoughts and opinions around crunch time as far as game development and movies go, and how you feel about all these game delays coming out of nowhere. It really is just a season for game delays. I would totally expect more to come soon. Just keep an open ear for that. Anyway, that's about all we have today. Have a kick-ass week, everybody.